My dad and I went on a little road trip to Tartu to visit my aunt, his sister, and I took my knitting with me. Those are the sleeves, also puffy giant sleeves with very fitted cuffs. I am making this sweater out of recycled wool that I found around the house and in an Uuskasutuskeskus, a thrift store in Tallinn, and I started it last summer and never got around to it because I left it at home purposefully. Every time I went back to Moscow, I knew that I would have to focus on my degree collection, especially because this was the most important project that I had so far, and I didn't want anything to distract me. And if I were to take it back with me, I knew that this would be a project that was itching in the back of my mind, always like, oh, finish me, so I left it here. It seems that I'm going to be staying in Tallinn for a bit longer than I was hoping to. So I'm currently in my dad's office, also known as my sister's bedroom. I'm here trying to figure out how to stretch and to what degree should I stretch out my prints so that the girls in Moscow can print them out for me, because sublimation print is quite expensive when it's outside of our university. Because I have a lot of fabrics purchased and I have my patterns in Moscow, everything stayed in Moscow, I'm going to have to ask my boyfriend to basically FedEx or DHL everything in here. And because I want to save as much money as possible and I already have fabrics for look number 6, which is, I asked a couple of my group mates to help me with the printing method. So Lyova is going to go to university, bring those 6 meters of cotton there. The girls are going to print out my print, which I'm currently working on, and transfer it to the fabric so that at least I have one look that I can work on in Estonia. I'm super glad that I at least had enough brains to create a vector graphic for one of the patterns. So look number 6 and look number 4 both have a blank pattern on them, and I created that blank in Illustrator, and thank God I saved the file in Illustrator, because if I were to export it into PDF, I would not have been able to stretch it out to 3 meters tall without losing quality. So because I'm working in Illustrator, I'm using vector graphics, and if you don't know, it means that the whole drawing consists of vectors of lines instead of pixels. And when you stretch out like a photo, traditional photo that consists of pixels, it loses quality, especially if you stretch it out from A4 to 3 meters to 150. So at least I had the brains to do that, so I'm very glad. Right now I don't really have any problems with stretching out the blank, but I do have problems with stretching out my body prints, which you can see on all the rest of the looks. It's going to be a bit challenging, and I do hope that I have enough power to stretch them without losing much quality. I'll have to see it in Photoshop, but obviously I'm not going to have the clear representation of how it looks exactly one-to-one, so let's see, I might have to change it all the way through. I really hope I don't have to, but that might be the case.
You know what happens when a fashion design student goes back home? They get asked to finish, fix, or create something new for every family member that they see. So that typically is the case for me. I don't mind it. I like finishing stuff up for my parents or fixing their clothing. This is a way more sustainable option than buying anything new, so I'm glad that they're asking me to do that. But I found a little bit of a time window to create something for myself. So I found this beautiful ribbed jersey in an off-cut section of a fabric store, and I decided to drape something similar to the tops that I was experimenting with when we first went into lockdown mode. You may have seen them on my Instagram or in one of the older vlogs that I posted, which I'll link down below in the clickable I button as well, but I decided to merge this idea of those draped tops with an underwear section, which I saw a photo of on Pinterest. I really like how it is merging and cutting off the body in different sections, so I decided to create something similar, and I started by draping that jersey on the body. And as you can see, I folded the edge of the jersey and I cut off a piece, and then I did the exact same thing, just mirrored. So I have 2 identical pieces. I was sewing them on a regular straight stitch sewing machine, and that sewing machine is very difficult to work with, so bear with me. If you have any kind of sewing machine at all, that is great. Don't expect a very detailed tutorial because this was just a random thing. You'll see later on how this goes south. So I sewed 2 identical pieces, I flipped them inside out, and then I proceeded to pin a little, about like 2 centimeter strip along the edge of the fabric to cut it out. This would be a channeling for my underwears. And for the underwears, actually, I cut them out from an old bra that I found around the house. I don't think I've thrown out any piece of clothing for the past like 10 or 15 years. We have donated a lot of them, but some of them just stayed here. And luckily I found an underwear that was fitting me pretty well, and I decided to just cut it off with the fabric around it without actually taking the underwear out. This way I wouldn't have to stuff that little channel that I just made with jersey. So I stitched that jersey channel, and flipping it inside out was a challenge. If you have a very skinny tunnel, it's going to be even more difficult, but I suggest to keep it more or less wide. So I used a pair of tongs to just flip it inside out every couple of centimeters. I had to pull it through, but it got a bit easier in the end. After that, I ironed it with a seam going to the wrong side, in the middle of the wrong side, and then I had to put those underwires into the channel. Before that I actually painted my underwires because I was cutting it out from a dark blue fabric, and my jersey is quite opaque but it still shows a little bit of discoloration and it becomes grayish because of that blue tone, so I just decided to take an acrylic paint, just paint those over. Yes, it will be crusty, but because we're covering them in a channel and also stitching them on top of the top, it's not going to be irritating to the body, so I just decided to go this rogue way. Then I wanted to measure out my upper part of the waist and under the boobs, and I had to create a tunnel that would go around this area, and I would have to fold it over twice so that the finish would be clean. But as I said before, I ended up with something completely different. So this is basically an organised inspired top, and I decided to go just a very simple route. I tried draping, I tried pinning things, but because I don't have a mannequin, it was so challenging that I just decided to scrap the idea because it would have turned out very amateur.
I'm about to head out to lunch with my family, but after that I will take you along with me to finding fabrics for my degree collection. Because today Lyova is sending off the package with all my fabrics and my patterns and printed fabric prints. I'm really hoping that this is going to arrive by Tuesday or Wednesday, so I'm also looking for places where I could sew. And my mom posted like a post on Facebook. She's got a bunch of friends, so I do have 4 different options, one of which just got cancelled a couple of minutes ago, so I'm gonna have to call other places. But in the meantime, before I actually find a place to sew, I think finding fabrics would be the better option, because I'm gonna try to find as sustainable options as possible, and that was my goal from the beginning. I'm gonna first of all go to Conga Jungle Outlet, where you can find fabrics which are sort of like offcuts or destroyed pieces in some sections which would not otherwise be used in a commercial place, but I am making a very small collection, so it's probably gonna work. I'm really hoping I could find like nude silky organza which will hold the shape much better, and it will be for look number 5. And if I do succeed, that's going to be amazing. If I don't find that, I'm also looking for some kind of nude-ish or white mesh where I could print my print on top of the print from these looks. And if I do find that, that's going to be success. If I don't, I'm going to also be fine with just finding little jersey elastic pieces for trimmings and for the finishings of those bodysuits and tops. So fingers crossed we're going to find everything we are looking for, and let's get into this.
In my opinion, this is the most student-friendly place ever. Because the prices are so low and there are so many different color options, you can test multiple different things without spending too much money on it. Especially if you're just learning, if you're not exactly studying fashion but just want to explore different materials, this is the perfect place for you. They have very versatile finishes, everything is curated very beautifully, and even like the off-cut piles, they just don't cost anything. They are both selling rolls of fabrics which you can just cut off a piece, but also just little off-cut sections. So they have baskets which you can just grab as much fabric as you want and they will just weigh it, and in some cases the prices are as low as €1 per the weight. So my orange fabric that you'll see me get, I got for the weight, and it was in a €1 pile, so it didn't cost me anything almost. I do suggest to check out this place. I'm the biggest fan of it. I will always advertise it, and now they even have more space. So they have, I think, 4 different rooms now, and I was allowed into the back room to check out all the fabrics there. Unfortunately, didn't find anything I was looking for, but you might find, so definitely check out those places. And the workers here are super friendly, so if you chat with them, they will definitely allow you to enter that secret room and check out the fabrics that are still not out yet, so definitely check it out.
Initially went to that store to find fabrics for my degree collection, and this one was the only one I actually found for that purpose, and it is white polyester mesh. Now, I do know that polyester is not sustainable whatsoever. That is why I really wanted to find it in that specific store, because this is a dead stock fabric which got dirty, so no actual factories wanted to accept it, and that's the reason why the fabric is so much cheaper than it would have been initially. By buying it secondhand, by buying a dirty version of that fabric, I'm at least saving this polyester from going into landfill, so I'm kind of justifying the purchase of a completely synthetic fabric. And I actually needed this exact one because it is of semi-transparent, which was exactly what I was looking for. It is stretchy, it is white, it will absorb my print, and it was, I think, like €3 per meter, so it's not expensive at all. I am very happy with that purchase. Next fabric is this beautiful orange cotton. I was looking for fabric to make a dress out of with puffy sleeves and it being very fitted and gathered in some areas, so I found just the right color and a little bit of a print for it to look interesting when it is gathered. I do like when straight lines are getting wonky and getting disturbed and interrupted when you gather them. So I think that's great patches. I love the color. I think it suits my complexion, and I'm very excited to see what I can make out of it. The last fabric that I got, also not for my degree collection, sole purpose of fulfilling my childhood dream. This is more of an accurate representation of what the shade looks like. It's sort of a mixture between aquamarine blue and deep navy blue, so it's a quite interesting shade. I'm not sure if the camera translated well, but I love the ribbing on it, and since I was a baby I really wanted to try and play around with this kind of fabric, but it was very expensive all the time, and unless it was 80% off I would have never bought it, because it was 26 euros per meter and I bought it for like 5 years. So I'm very excited. As you can see, it's already cut in pieces because I started making a top out of it. This also had a little defect on it, so the ribbing is here and it is straight and beautiful, but in some areas you can see creases. Yeah, like in here, I don't know if that's visible, but some creases are here. I absolutely don't mind them, especially because I'm gathering that top as well, because I love those interrupted straight lines. I think it's not that visible, and even if it is in some areas where it's not gathered, I think it adds a little bit of three-dimensional aspect to it, so absolutely no problem. If I manage to finish the top in time for this video, you'll also see how that fits, but it posed a bit of a challenge because my sewing machine at home at my parents' house is not coping with me whatsoever. It's so impossible to sew this fabric because it is a little stretchy, but for the most part it doesn't stretch that well. The sewing machine just goes nuts and doesn't want to sew it at all. I checked all the things. I checked the tension, I checked the threading, the bottom bobbin, I checked everything, and it's not working, so I'm hand stitching the whole thing. And as you can tell, I'm avoiding as many seams as possible, so it's a long sleeve gathered open back top, and I'm just like hand stitching for a couple of hours at this point. We'll see how that turns out, but I'm very excited to see how that works. My mom fell in love with this fabric, so maybe I'll go back and get some more and make her trousers, but I will obviously wait for the time that I can actually find the sewing studio and use an overlocker to finish it, because otherwise hand stitching a whole pair of trousers would be a task I'm not willing to undergo. So let's see how that happens.
And this is that top I made. It had to be all hand stitched because my machine was not working, coping with me, so I gathered the sleeves using elastic bands on the biceps area. I used 2 elastic bands per hand, and all the rest I just decided to hand stitch the pieces together. I pulled a long string that I bought pre-made from Kanga Jungle, and I pulled it through the back area so that it could be tightened and wrapped around the body different ways. I've been obsessing over boat necks for a while, and also I love fitted cuffs on tops with some dramatic drapey action, so I decided to incorporate both of those ideas. Also, because it was kind of limited in the way I finished the fabric because I was hand stitching everything, I decided to keep the finish raw, so the armholes are raw, the neckline is raw, the bottom part of the garment is also raw. I don't mind it because this fabric is really good, and originally it was 26 euros. It is not fraying, which is fortunate for me, but if it were to be a different fabric, I don't think it would have performed the same way. The last thing I had to do was fire wrap the edges of that little synthetic tie, and because it is synthetic, it burns out pretty beautifully. It sort of melts the edges together, so it's not going to fray. Thank you for watching. Even though there wasn't much degree collection development action here, there is going to be a lot more of that next week, because I just found a sewing machine, a place where I could sew. Even though the package hasn't arrived from Moscow yet, I still found a way to actually start look number 6, the most dramatic one. I'm hoping I'm going to be posting more regularly because I'm going to have way more stuff to show you, because I'm actually going to be sewing. So a professional industrial sewing machine is coming my way. It's going to be in my bedroom if we manage to pull it up the stairs because it's so heavy. But yeah, I'm going to finally start my collection development process and actually start sewing it. Keep an eye out for that one, and see you next week. Bye.